Hey Algebra 2 students, this is some extra practice for the diamond box method, which you may have seen before or you may not have. Our goal with this method is to factor quadratic expressions. So again, a quadratic is something like ax squared plus bx plus c using the diamond box method. That's our goal today, and we're going to use structures of expressions. This is our standard for this unit. Is structure of expressions to identify ways to rewrite it. So this quadratic here, if we're going to write it factored, it's going to be writing it something like some x term here, another x term here. You may have seen methods where you kind of just try and fill in these parentheses, or other methods. This method is pretty procedural, so you should just be able to, once you have this method down, go step by step through it to get your factorization. But it takes some setup. So first, let's look at these diamonds below. How could you use the left and right terms to get the top term? So let's take a second and think about that. My left and right terms, how could we use the two of them to get our top term? So I circled the left and right terms and underlined our top term. Well, something I notice as I'm circling these and underlining the top term is that the left and right terms both just have x's, and the top terms have an x squared. And I know I'd have to multiply x and x to get x squared. If I also look at it, it looks like, let's check if the multiplication works otherwise. 10 times negative 2. If I multiplied the terms, because it looks like the x's might be multiplied, if I multiplied them, will it work out? Let's see. 10x is my left term times my right term, which is negative 2x. Does that equal 20x squared? Let's see. Well, 10 and negative 2, that's negative 20. Yep. And then x and x makes our x squared. So at least for this one, it seems to work. Let's check the others really quick. Negative 4x times negative 1x. Multiplying to get this top term, does it work? Negative and a negative makes a positive. 4 and 1 make a 4. Yep. X and x make an x squared. Okay, so that works in that one. 2x. There's 3x. 2 times 3 is 6. X times x is x squared. All right, so this seems like we got a pretty good pattern here. 5x and 2x multiply to get the top. All right, so in these diamonds, it seems like we can multiply our left and right terms to get the top, and then add, let's see what we can do to get the bottom. If we have 5x and 2x to make 7, 2 and 3 to make 5, negative 4, negative 1 to make negative 5, and 10 and negative 2 to make 8. Well, it seems like we have also here our x term's not changing. If we have x, it ends up in an x, so I don't think we're multiplying or dividing. And it seems like, to me, it looks like the sum, right? 5 plus 2 is 7. If I add those up, 2 plus 3, that's 5. Yep. Negative 1 plus negative 4, that is negative 1 plus negative 4. We're at negative 1, take away 4 more, that takes us down to negative 5. And then 10 plus negative 2, these are x's. 10 take away 2, yeah, that's 8. Great. So in this diamond box method, to summarize, how could we use the left and right terms to get the top? We're going to be multiply. And how can we use left and right terms to get the bottom? We would add them. So when we're factoring quadratics, we actually have to solve this exact problem. We need two numbers that multiply to make a certain number and two numbers that add to make a certain number. We're going to discuss those right now. So here's an example, both with a diamond and with a box. Our goal in this problem is going to be to take this quadratic expression and rewrite it as a product of two factors, two x term factors. What we're going to do is start by seeing where these pieces are going to go in our final answer. So our products, our terms, our factors are going to come out over here on the side and top of our box, just like we did with our tabular multiplication. our original quadratic is going to go in here. X squared, and then 20 down here. So I'm just taking our first term, which was x squared, and putting it in this first box, and our last term, which was 20, putting in this bottom right box. Now what we're missing here is we're missing these two middle terms. We know that together they need to sum to -9, because that's our b term, -9x. But we don't have enough information to do it all out yet. And then we may have some ideas initially of what's going to go here, but it would be really nice if we had our two x terms that sum to -x first. That's where our diamond's going to come in. So when we're filling out our diamond, we're going to take our first term, our ax squared term, and our last term. So we're going to take this x squared term and this 20, and we're going to multiply them and put them in the top of our diamond. So this is going to be 20 times x squared, which is just 20x squared. And then the bottom term in our diamond comes from the bx term, -9x. So this setup is going to help us figure out what two terms need to go in. I'm just going to highlight in purple here, purple and need another highlighter color. How about this one, red? So purple and red, they're going to tell us what go in these two boxes. So these two factors, they need to multiply to make 20x, and they need to add to make -9x. Okay. So what I like to do when I start this out, I'm looking for this purple, this left and right, it's going to multiply to make 20x squared. So I'm going to list over here some factors or some options of things that could multiply to make 20. And then I'm going to list their sum on the right. So we'll be able to check as we go if they add up to -9. So some factors of 20 that come to mind, they need to make a positive 20, so it needs to be for 4 and 5. Those are factors of 20. Those two things multiply to make 20. But they would add 4 plus 5 to 9. So that seems way too high. But if I look at what we're supposed to get -9. I'm like, I wish I had negative numbers as part of my factors so we could get a negative sum. But I need them to be a positive 20, so I might try -4 and -5 as two other numbers that multiply to make 20. Negative and negative makes a positive, and they're both negative, so when I add them up, -4, take away 5 more, takes us to -9. So over here I started to list some factors, and I just made a guess at the start, and it wasn't quite close, but I used that guess to figure out, I wish these are actually negative, and then we did guess two factors that multiply to make positive 20 and combine or add to make -9. So I figured out my factors. I'm going to fill them in here. That means -4x there and -5x there. All right, so let's fill those same ones in now over here in our original box, -4x, -5x. So at this point, we just used our diamond to help us fill in these missing x terms that total to -9, but also multiply to 20x squared. So now our job is to fill in this box, or the terms on the top of our box. I think an easy place to start is with our highest power, our x squared. Here, we need two factors, so this top right box and this top left box, two factors that multiply to make x squared. Well, the only things that multiply to make x squared are x and x. There may be others, but those are at least a simple pair of things that multiply to make x squared. Well, now that I have that, I'm going to look at this other orange one up here. I need something times our blue x on the right that makes negative 5x. Well, we have the x already, so I'm just going to put a negative 5 up here. All right. Well, now that we have that one, we know that there's a 20 down here. Negative 5 times what would give us negative 20, or positive 20, so it has to be a negative. Negative and negative. 5 times 4 gives us 20. And then, well, that's it. We've actually filled in our terms. We've got x minus 4 and x minus 5 on top. Let's check the last entry. This bottom left we didn't really talk about. The purple, dark purple. X times negative 4 is certainly negative 4x. All right, so we just take our terms. In orange, x minus 5, and in blue, x minus 4. And we could check ourselves really quickly on this. If we just distributed these terms back out, we would get x squared minus 4x minus 5x plus 20. Combine x squared minus 9x plus 20. And sure enough, that's our original answer. So that's a good way to just check yourself at the end to make sure our steps worked out. Okay, so there's a lot of steps in this process, but I'm going to sort of break it down at the start of this one and give our steps ahead of time. So step 1, we want to make our diamond. And fill in the top and the bottom. Step 2, we want to make our box. Fill, actually no. Step 2, we want to find the left and right sides of the diamond. And then step 3, fill in the box. And step 4, we want to fill in the factors. Okay. So this first setting, factor that expression. So I'm going to just make a simpler diamond this time. On top, remember, it was our first and last terms multiplied. So this one's going to be negative 12 times x squared. And on bottom, it was our middle term. Negative 12 x squared. On bottom, it's 4x. Now, this is saying we need two numbers that multiply to make negative 12x squared and two numbers that add to make 4. So again, I like to make a little table for myself of a list of factors and their sum. So we're looking for factors of negative 12 and what they add up to. Well, off the top of my head, 12, I'll just do 12 and 1 to start. 1 and 12. 1 times 12 gives us 12. That would sum to 1 plus 12 is 13. Well, that's not very close to our sum. We need our sum to be 4. I also need, actually my factors, they need to be negative, so I need one of them to be negative. So I would fix that. Negative 1 and 12 would be negative 12, and they would sum to, one takeaway, so they would sum to 11. So we're still not very close with this guess. And I can imagine maybe making a positive 1 and a negative 12, but similarly, we're just going to get negative 11 for our sum. So those don't seem to be working. Let's pick a different pair of factors. Those are just not working. How about 6 and 2 are factors of 12, 2 and 6. And one of them needs to be negative. All right, so I just made negative 2 times 6 would give us negative 12. And then the sum, negative 2 plus 6, that's going to be 6 minus 2. That's 4. Oh, well, that one worked. So by choosing 2 and 6 as our factors, and then saying, oh, one needs to be negative, so we get a negative 12. It worked out. If we had guessed the other way, if we had gone positive 2 and negative 6, we would get negative 12 as a factor, but it would sum to negative 4, so then we would have to flip our signs. So it may take you several guesses on these factors to get the right ones, but this is an organized way to keep track of which ones you guessed and what they worked out to. So now we have our negative 2 and our 6. So negative 2x and positive 6x, they multiply to make negative 12x squared, and they add to make 4x on the bottom. Plus and multiply. Okay? Now we just need to make our box. So we made our diamond, filled in the top and the bottom. Check. We found the left and right sides of the diamond. Check. Now we need to fill in our box. So our box I'm going to make over here. Remember, this box is going to be our whole polynomial. So x squared is the a term. Negative 12 is our constant. The two terms that we fill in on the left and right are these yellow and orange pieces that sum to our total 4x and sum to our total. So I'm going to put orange down here and yellow to the right. That leaves us with 6x and negative 2x. Okay, so that's it. We filled in our box with all the parts of our quadratic. Now we have to fill in our terms on the top and on the side. Again, I like to start with the x squared because it's really easy to just say, well, x and x are going to multiply to make x squared. Then I'm going to look at this top right one. I'm like, well, what times x would give me 6x? Well, positive 6 would work. 6 times x would give me 6x. Down below at this bottom right corner, 6 times what would give me negative 12? Well, negative 2. And then we should check this last one on the bottom left. X times negative 2, x times negative 2 does give us negative 2x. Okay. So we have our factors. Now we're able to just write our solution. So our polynomial, our quadratic, factors into two terms. One that it's x plus 6 and one that's x minus 2. And those are from top and side of our box. So to summarize, this method really helps us step through how to do these factoring problems, and it will help us as their problems become more difficult to factor. But in summary, I'm going to sort of give us an example of a polynomial down here, a question that might be asked in general terms. So if we're asked to factor something like ax squared plus bx plus c, what I would do first is draw a diamond. I would fill in the top and bottom using these steps that we established already. Make a diamond, fill in the top and bottom. On top, it is c times ax squared. It's the first and last terms multiplied together. And on bottom, it's bx. Then step 2, we would fill in our missing terms. I'm going to use light blue for this. We're going to fill in these missing terms here and here. Then in our box, we put our ax squared term here. We put our c term down here. We know that these two diagonals need to add up to bx. Then we fill them in with our pieces that we found from our diamond. Then our last step is to figure out what factors make this box True. Pink and orange. So fill in these blanks once we've completed our square. So use this diagram to help you as you start to dive into the next ones. It'll help us remember that when we make our diamond, the top is the product. It's ax squared times c, the product of the first and last terms. The bottom is our linear term, the bx term, and then where the pieces go in our box. So you have on the next page, you have 5 questions to factor. On the first 2, I gave us the box to help fill them in. Take advantage of that, and then later on you'll be drawing your own. This is one method to factor. There are a lot of methods to help factor quadratics. This is just one way. So try it out, see if you like it. But then we'll also have videos for some other methods later on. Once you're done with these 5 problems, go check with your intervention teacher your answers. They will have a solution key to make sure you've done these correctly.